you talk about your mother, and that was just a consistent theme from beginning to end. Not only the lessons she taught, but also this struggle between the both of you and this dynamic. Um, was it painful for you to have to relive that?
If I had attempted to tell this story some 20 years earlier, I might have found the details of it somewhat painful, visibly so. But by the time I told the story, I had long since sorted out a lot of the pain, a lot of the problems. Life with my mother was not easy. I didn't really come to understand her more fully until I'd gone through a whole period of psychoanalysis and began to look back into my life in greater detail to understand what were the things that really, what were her obstacles, what were the things that she had to overcome, and what price did we pay in her attempt to overcome these hurdles and these obstacles that were put before her. So when I told the story, I could do it with some sense of ease and with some sense of calm. But it has never been easy to talk about my mother. I didn't know when she passed away. When we finally found her, she was in a pauper's grave. We had to retrieve her body to identify her and put her in a place of rest that was more appropriate. But she made life very challenging. None of us seemed to have been able to do anything that pleased her. She was in such a pained place as a woman, as an immigrant, and as a person of color.
Now, here's what I find to be interesting. You talk about that pain and her being sort of locked in, and then you doing psychoanalysis. And Terry Williams, in her book Black Pain, she talks about the importance of African Americans not being afraid to go to therapy.
I think there's a particular stamp on the life of black people where they're afraid to expose their deepest feelings, because in those feelings resides a rage that's almost nuclear in its proportions to reality. Black people have always kept their pain in a silent place. On occasion, it erupts, and when it erupts, it usually erupts violently. And I think most of our culture, most of our lives are spent trying to contain that anger and to try to deal with life in some rational and productive way. It's not easy. And especially when it comes to talking about things that my particular brand of analysis came through the Freudian experience. And in order to understand a lot about your life, there is an aspect of the analytic application where you have to dig deep into your sexuality, into the conflicts of sexuality. And in the black community, we're overburdened with a lot of things that have to do with homophobia, with how we look upon others who may see life sexually different than we do. In my family, for instance, I had an uncle, the youngest of my family, who was gay. And I had another uncle who was stone gangster. He ran the numbers business in Harlem, highly regarded in that culture. His name was Lenny Love. He knew Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy Johnson was one of his agents in the street, one of his runners. And he was this macho guy. And every time we had a family dinner and my gay uncle showed up, my uncle Lenny went into an epileptic moment. He just kind of always choked on the fact that this person sitting across him had effeminate ways, had a style to his life, and had a humor that just didn't fit what he thought a real man should look like.
And then what we also have is that whole notion of what constitutes a real man is I have multiple ladies, so therefore multiple children, so therefore so my manhood is defined by that.
Yes, absolutely. That's all part of the game. So when I came upon the whole issue of analysis, I wasn't so much looking at how to identify my sexuality. I was looking at how to contain it and how to get away from those things that you constantly substituted sex for when you really have been dealing with issues on another level. It was an important period for me.
So you get all of that in your history, all of that operating in your DNA, and it's a question of, okay, I need to figure out, how does this play a role in who I am?
I found that necessity was most critical when I was diagnosed almost at the age of 70 with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I was stunned by the examination and the results that they found when they took sampling.
Is that because you were always healthy, you always took care of yourself and always fit?
Absolutely. I'm in a culture where, I ride horses with Sidney Poitier and shoot bad guys. I mean, the life in which we live, you sometimes feel that you are impervious.
Right.
That nothing can touch you. And when they told me that I had cancer, it absolutely stunned me. And I had to go through that whole thing of looking at why me and what was it about. I decided to become very active in doing consciousness raising around in the black community on the issues of cancer when I discovered that black men were more exposed to cancer than almost any other tribe, any other group. And in taking a look at why this was, there was an important critical part of that critique which said homophobia, men's unwillingness to be examined, to have rectal examination and other things.
I don't want anybody touching me. And then they bring up the Tuskegee experiment. They bring up every kind of excuse possible.
Exactly.
And you're sitting there going, yeah, but you could be dying.
Exactly. And I had to just get out and say to black men, went to churches, did a lot of stuff up at the Abyssinia Baptist and other churches around America, talking to the black male community, women as well. I didn't ignore the gender implications, but I went after men mostly because they were the ones that were the most affected numerically.
Because men are hard-headed.
Absolutely.